Up next, and if we have the panel led by John Stevens from UNC School of Government. There's a number of you, so if you could make your way up to the front. I've met John a couple of times in the past, but recently got an opportunity to review a document. If you're really into local government and you're really into this sort of thing of how can I help, where can data make a difference in my community, then you should check out his paper that's on the UNC School of Government page. It's called The Civic Technology, Open Data, and Citizen Volunteers as a Resource for North Carolina Local Governments. There's a number of folks in this room, actually, who were instrumental in making it happen as well, and John led that effort, so thank you, John. Also, you'll be introducing, I'm sure, with the panel, so make sure that you all think of what questions you might have, and I will make sure to go to the next slide. Thank you. So you know their names. Thanks.
So good morning. One more time. Good morning. Okay. Thank you, Lori, for that introduction. As she mentioned, I'm at the School of Government, but I'm most importantly for this gathering a member of Code for Durham, one of the many civic tech volunteer organizations, over 70 nationally, and North Carolina is blessed by about 9. So let me list them off really quickly, introduce my folks, and get going. Asheville, Charlotte, who we'll hear from directly, Greensboro, who also hear from, Durham, who we'll hear from directly, Raleigh, Cary, and Chapel Hill. So I'm going to introduce folks very briefly and then just do 2 questions for them to respond about the relationships they've built between local government employees and elected officials and these volunteer civic tech groups, commonly called brigades, but they come by very different kinds of terms. So to my immediate left is Jill Bjers from the Open Charlotte Collaborative now? Open Charlotte Brigade, used to be called Code for Charlotte. She is both one of the co-founders, co-captain, and of the umbrella group for all these civic tech organizations. Jill is the chair of the National Advisory Committee for Code for America. Next is Sagar Mishra, co-captain for Code for Greensboro, last time I checked, and a private sector consultant in software. Next, Laura Biediger, with the City of Durham's community engagement. She's a community engagement coordinator, especially working with particular neighborhoods on crime prevention and other neighborhood needs, but also, second hat, co-captain for Code for Durham, and a Southeast representative for the National Advisory Committee for all these civic tech groups. You know Bonnie Danahy? Danahy. Okay, I'm good that bad. Bonnie Danahy, who's been 2 years as the open data manager for the city of Raleigh. So first question, starting with Jill, and we'll go down that way. I'll pass it down, and then you can share at the end, is tell us a bit about how you've developed or how the partnership works between your volunteer brigade and local government, and especially 1 or 2 things that seems to be going well.
Hey everyone, thank you. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for giving me an excuse to trek out here. So the train was lovely this morning, even though it leaves early. So one of the things that it's really hard to narrow down exactly like what has gone great. We've been around for about 5 years now. But I think mostly like the biggest thing that we get from our partnership with our local government is our impact is off the charts because we have a solid partner. And it comes kind of by 2 ways. One, our projects, when they're coupled with a city champion, and that we develop not only with our community, but with the city through the whole process, the adoption rate is great. When we don't, and we build something that is equally as cool, but was not involved with the city or government of any kind, the adoption rate is much lower. And then we struggle to make sure everybody knows that we built this really, really cool thing that nobody's using. So that's a huge one. The second one is really just like the impact. Being able to see, like, as a citizen who's never worked in government, being able to see like how the internal structure works, and then share, you know, for all of our volunteers, that's most of us don't have a good view into what government does on a day-to-day basis. And with a lot of the general sentiment in the world these days, our government isn't doing well. So it's really nice today to have the chance to introduce them to somebody who's doing good work, who cares, who shows up every day, and they can see that impact. It makes them better residents. It makes them, more participatory, which is great. But also, it's nice for our government partners to see citizens who also care, but don't just care about complaining, care about putting their hands in and doing something. So I would say, like, it's kind of twofold. That's been really neat to watch.
Yeah, so I think in Greensboro, our situation might be a little bit different. We have some relationship with our city, but it's primarily through, city workers who are interested in civic tech. So, for example, one of our co-captains was a data analyst for the city of Greensboro, and he was very instrumental in helping the city of Greensboro open up their open data portal, and that went live, and that was pushed by both us and the city, and we kind of had an event centered around that with the city CIO attending and that sort of thing. So they've been, to some degree, enablers of some of the efforts that they've undertaken and that we've kind of partnered with them on. We also have people from Guilford who are helping the county. So Jason Jones, for example, very active in contributing to different projects. And that's kind of where our relationships have been strongest, I think, is people in local government who also care about civic issues getting involved.
Hi, again, I'm Laura. So this starts the city employee portion of the panel. I'm a community engagement coordinator with the city of Durham. And I would say the first thing that's been really great about our brigade and government relationship is like what Jill was saying, helping residents to learn about their community. We had a really awesome 30-minute presentation this past Tuesday on affordable housing. And that might sound really boring, but affordable housing is a huge topic. And actually, Layla was there. Hi, Layla. A third of our attendees lately are new to Durham. They've moved there in the past 6 months to a year. Most residents may not know much about their city, but especially new residents. And we had a senior planner come and give us a really excellent overview of affordable housing. So we've had affordable housing. We have emergency management coming up. Lots of in-depth topics that I don't think that many people would have been exposed to otherwise. And the second piece that I've really enjoyed as a government employee is seeing government step outside of City Hall and really ask for help. It might take them a while, and we may not always be able to respond as quickly as they want or have the needs or be able to meet their needs. But just the fact that government is recognizing that we can't do it all. Government can't do it all. I know it's a shocker. We shouldn't do it all. It's really great to be able to leverage resources in our community to solve problems. One of our most recent successes is partnering with, we have a Bloomberg Cities innovation team, and they've been studying improving economic prosperity for justice-involved individuals. So we've helped them build a text bot so that local residents who have lost their driver's licenses can apply to get their fines waived and be able to get their driver's licenses back. That's something that we've helped them build for free, sitting at the table with city staff and volunteers. And from that, we're going to start talking to the DA and looking at how we can help with expungement and things like that. So it's really exciting to be able to see that actual collaborative partnership between government and the community.
So I'm working on it. That's the best thing I can say. So I've only been with the city, I'm closing in on my second year. So the first year I really spent figuring out government life. So I didn't really have a lot of, not time, but the focus was really on internal, and I hadn't really reached out to brigades and stuff from that. So I come from a corporate background. I've been doing BI for like 20 years. And
I'm sorry, BI?
Yeah, business intelligence.
Thank
so
you.
I've been working on that for like a long time. And I've always come from a corporate background where you didn't share. right? So you're worried about intellectual property and you didn't do any of that. So for me, the biggest thing has been that sharing experience, whether it's between organizations, between cities, or with the brigade. That's really been the biggest highlight for me, is being able to not just learn from other people's mistakes or from their successes, but really share the details of how you got to where you are. So that's a relationship that we hope to continue forward. And right now, internally, I'm working with the CACs, which is the community engagement, and working with them to bring up the level of data intelligence outside of the city, so with the citizens, so that they can leverage some of the great things that are being built around, but really understand what people are talking about and what they want to see.
That's great, and people are doing wonderful on short answers. And as I look at the audience, we will have time for questions for folks, so start getting that together. Our second one is, what has been some challenges, or what are you still working on to try to make the connection between these volunteers with IT and design and other experience who want to do good specifically in their community with data from their community, and partnering with the appropriate folks in your local government?
So for us, it's tempering expectations and timelines. So we get a volunteer in, and these are highly skilled, highly productive, highly active volunteers. They're not your normal volunteer that's just looking for somebody with a clipboard to go clean a kennel. They build things for a living, and they do these very complex things. So we get them in, they get excited about a project, and they want to go do something. And then we get to introduce them of the pace of government. And that's tough. It's tough to keep them excited and get our government partners on board and have them not already on third base while government's still whoa, I have no idea what's going on. So figuring out that balance between the two is still a challenge. It's a challenge for pretty much everything we do. But it's, yeah, I don't expect it to change. It's just figuring out how do we get them to come together on a better timescale where maybe we push government to move a little bit faster, but then we also keep the volunteers pull their reins in a little bit so they're not all the way down the field when we're still figuring out what the play is.
In Greensboro, I think our biggest challenges have been engaging the senior leadership of our local governments. Civic technology and civic innovation is a very new area, and brigades are even kind of newer. And depending on which city you're in, there might be zero knowledge of what a brigade actually does and what it means for a city to have a group of citizens who are technologically savvy and want to work on projects that benefit their community. So we've tried doing outreach to the leadership of the city, invited them to things like Code for America Summit, where they can meet with other city officials who get it. And so that's been one of our biggest challenges, is just getting local government leadership to, quote unquote, get it, get what we are, get what we're doing. And then having them take an active participatory role in what we do versus a passive, okay, we understand that there's this thing called a brigade in our city, let's see if they do anything. And then it leaves us kind of in this island to try to get something done to get visibility or get media attention. And it's sort of, that's a tough spot to be in with an all-volunteer brigade. We've also noticed recently that once local government folks, so govies leave an organization. So once govies leave a brigade, the brigade kind of flounders in terms of its relationship with the city. So our co-captain was a data analyst for the city of Greensboro. He moved on to a private sector job, and then our relationship with the city evaporated, almost instantaneously. If we didn't have somebody able to knock on the door of the leadership of our city, they weren't coming to us, and it became almost impossible. They're not going to respond to some random dude's email, right? So that's kind of our biggest challenge there.
Mine probably really relates to what you guys are saying. I feel like it comes down to timing and trust. So the same thing of the government really getting it. I I would say part of the barrier in getting it is time to think about trying to get it, because you're like, oh, I got these police issues, I got emergencies, I got hurricanes, there's this volunteer group over here. So I don't want it to necessarily sound that they can't get it. It's just like it's very low on the totem pole. So the issue of trust of government coming out, and people are starting to recognize that we need more help, but that's not everyone. And taking, so then the second part is taking the time to come to evening meetings or out of town meetings or out of state, things like that, when they're still not quite getting it, is still a really big ask. Also, the issue of timing is like sometimes you have members who have a great idea and they're ready to go, and we don't know anyone in that department. And that's when you create a project that isn't very successful. Or sometimes, this is rare, but someone from the government will come to us and say, hey, I've got this thing, can you help me with this? But I don't have a volunteer to fill that. I don't have I was thinking about the other day, I feel like it's kind of just a collision thing. Like I just keep trying to throw them together, and every now and then there will be the right match of volunteers that are really interested in this project and have a skill set, and a really good government partner who wants to sit at the table and see it move forward. So it's timing and trust, and just keep going to build those relationships. And so one of the ways that I've done that is inviting, which it's tough, just sending cold emails and maybe having coffee or something like that with them every now and then, but inviting people to come in and speak at each of our Code for Durham meetings. We meet every other week just in Durham, if you guys ever want to come visit. We have emergency management coming up, participatory budgeting, transportation, lots of different topics, and they're coming to talk to us. If you're ever looking on how to recruit those people, just watch the press releases that are coming out, because those are the people working on issues they're trying to get out in the community and talk about their project. And to be clear, just because they come to speak to us does not mean that we are creating a project with them. I had a volunteer come to me afterwards like, we haven't followed up with this person who came 3 meetings ago. And I was like, I know. This was just promised as an intro for us to learn about each other and kind of plant that seed so that things happen in the future. We have those contacts and we can continue to build a relationship. So even just government people every now and then do like to come talk to residents. So I encourage just starting with easy things like that.
So I guess I'll speak for government people. Right, so from our side, especially from the IT sector on the government side, we have very small teams that do a lot. So I think for us, we need to figure out how we can better leverage you to help us. We have certain areas in business that have some pocket IT or have some folks that are data generated, but not in all areas. So sometimes it makes them hard to think about how those partnerships can work. But for the Raleigh area, I'm your person. If you want to connect with somebody and get city resources, I'm it. So y'all know where to find me now. But that's really what we're trying to do, is figure out how we can use it, because we definitely need the help. And there's so many things that we want to do that are really cool projects that we see, but we don't have the resources to do it. So this is the perfect relationship to do that. And we're definitely open to hearing what y'all can do, because we like cool things too.
Just before we go to questions, I want to ask Jill to talk about one project, just so you get an idea that it doesn't have to be sophisticated coding, the police department and the toy donation system. And if you'll say that, and then I'll be looking for questions for our panel.
Sure. So we have a project that we call CMPD Winter Project. They still call it Christmas, but we like the Winter Project better. So we're going to pretend they've gotten on board with the name. So what it is every year CMPD provides Christmas for about 1,200 kids. And we've been doing, we were in a mutual meeting, absolutely not about this. Said hi, we got introduced, and then somebody, our municipal partner, mentioned that we were working with the city about open data, or the open data policy, and just unrelated things. And the police department raised their hand. They're like, "So you guys do what?" And so we had a meeting. It turns out, God bless them, they were doing the entire thing on paper. And we're super excited that they upgraded to typing it into an Excel spreadsheet. And my brain exploded and my heart broke at the same time. So at that point, I am. Luckily, we patched it together with some tech. Half cyborg now. So what we did was we built them. So we started off with the nomination process, and we just kind of like took some of the paper out of it. And didn't do a whole lot of it initially. Actually, they came to us just before. So literally the first year we did this with them, it was a Google form, so that they no longer had to type it. The nominators did, which they just thought was crazy. And then the next year we had some time and we actually built them, you know, a nomination platform. We've been expanding it since the nomination platform's done. This year you'll be able to go on a website that's owned by the CMPD and adopt a child. This isn't like, it isn't what we would call a normal civic tech project, because it's just not a normal civic tech project, but it's kind of our hearts and minds project. But it's been it's also the way that I get better police data, because it was a great relationship builder, right? It was the thing that they really, really needed. This is a department that's funded by the foundation on only donations. The police officers run it on their own time. So it's completely not funded. They have no money for real, like to do this. They would still be on paper. And so it's kind of one of those different projects, but it's been great. It's allowed us to build a relationship, and they've gone in and now vouch for us with other departments. So when I want to build a relationship with another department, it's not just the IT department that I'm saying, hey, they like us. I can also say, hey, the police department likes us. And we're techies, which is huge because police departments don't generally love techies. So certainly not outside techies. So that has been really, really big. It also helped when I approached our chief of police and asked for more extensive and longer police data, because now we had a trusted relationship. So I got to get a little bit more of my normal civic tech project out of our Hearts and Mind project.
See at least one question here, another one there. Let's start with Mark and then over to Steve. Oh, we're going to start with Steve.
Oh, okay.
We'll start.
Well, yeah, I gotta run to another meeting, but I really want to thank you all. And I'm a city councilman, former mayor. I'm also in the technology industry, and so we're starting to make in Morrisville. We're seeing more entrepreneurs come before the town with ideas and apps. I'm still having a lot of challenge. My mayor has tasked me with really starting more of an aggressive technology strategy for Morrisville, where we can really work with our staff and the great things that are going on in Cary and Raleigh to Morrisville. And he gets often frustrated because we have such a technologically sophisticated community in Morrisville, and a lot of the resistance that I'm getting, quite frankly, is from some of the council members in the administration that keep kicking the can down the road. So I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and make it happen on my own. So I hope the here. And so my question is, there's a lot of people interested in this stuff. So how would I go about getting a brigade started in Morrisville? And then how could I facilitate some interaction with our town employees so that we could start solving problems and then maybe showing the administration and some of the other council members the kind of things that we can do. So thank you.
Well, you could talk to any of the brigade leaders, and we can definitely talk with you about how to start one. As far as reaching government employees, I really like to look to other membership organizations, so like ELGL, engaging local government leaders. And there are people from across the country who are members of that. And so looking at other organizations, to me, where city ELGL, I'm not paid by them. This is just a pure endorsement. .org. But things like that, or GovLoop, or other things like as trying to be an innovator or an innovator within the city, that's an organization that I am a part of. So looking to see and even contacting them and asking if they have any town of Morrisville employees would be a great way to connect with people, because they may not be the IT director or the solid waste director, but it could be their analysts. And those are the people coming to the table to help identify the problems that I think are really powerful.
Laura, can you talk about our work with Fayetteville?
Yeah, so we're also working on starting a brigade in Fayetteville. If anyone is in Fayetteville or has contacts in Fayetteville, I am really excited about standing in front of Army Brigade people and saying that we're a volunteer brigade and just what. Yes. And that's just because I saw that they were promoting their open data. I know a few of their senior staff, and we're trying to also move east of Raleigh and Cary. And so we've just had conversations and talked about having an interest session with probably some of your residents who are interested in those sorts of things, and hopefully employees, and talking about initial projects. So that's definitely like Jason and Chris and Jill and I would be glad to help with. And that's a much easier drive.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing of hope I would say is that in Charlotte we had a city council, and I say that in past tense, who very much kicked the can down the road, who very much resisted any kind of technology. For a city our size, we had a huge technology debt. Even simple things, the residents kept calling for the city council meetings to be live streamed. Simple things, right? That they kept saying, no, we can't do that. That's too hard. We can't do that. Last year we had a bit of a reckoning, and of our 11-seat council, 7 of the seats are new. Almost every one of those new ones is under the age of 40. So our now median age of our city council is 45. All of the ones that kept kicking the can down that aren't there anymore. And so our residents really just literally got tired of it. And when they started being approached by people running for city council who had ideas, understand technology, understand where the world was going, they voted for them. And it's crazy, but fantastic. And they literally started setting up one of their phones in the corner of the room and Facebook living the meetings. Like, that's how deep the technology debt was.
Let's go to another question, and then another one right here.
Right. So last year, I pitched a session which was ambassadors. That I think it would be a good idea to have an ambassador program from the brigades into our respective cities, kind of the corollary or inverse to bringing city representatives into the Code for America is to have an ambassador program to go into the obscure little bitty departments who do very valuable work and impact the lives of citizens immensely, but they're not served by a too busy IT organization for the city or the county, and to say we might be able to help in even small ways to make your job more efficient, etc. What can you recommend for such an ambassador program idea?
Wow. From a city, yeah. I'm sorry. That's okay. I'm thinking you still had a mic.
No, I gave it up at some point. From a city perspective, I think it's a great idea to get into those departments. From an IT department's perspective, we better be at the table too. Because the thing that we don't want to have happen is popping up technology and all these things that are not being done across the organization, that are being done in silos. Because we're trying to break that down, and a project like that could bring it back up again. So I think it's a great idea, but we just want to make sure that you're respecting the organization and that the IT has a role in it.
I don't work for our IT department. And sometimes IT departments slow things down. Maybe not all. Sometimes they do. Which is why we are here. So I think the ambassador thing is great. That's where I say starting with coffee and starting with the relationship of trying to get to know people. And sometimes directors can be the path to go through if they're really innovative and they're wanting things like that. Sometimes directors aren't going to be that path, and it's finding the analysts who are part of ELGL or recent like MPA grads or things like that who are looking to innovate within government. So I personally would just say trying to contact people and set up conversations. Even right now, watching the press releases of things that are happening. Again, we have participatory budgeting coming up. Maybe there's a way that we can help provide mapping for that, or help people to be able to track demographics of who's showing up for participatory budgeting. But to me, like, coming to the table with ideas and examples of how you can help with things, saying like, we've helped set up this system for the police department, maybe we could do a similar thing with your department. But having actual examples, even if it's from other brigades, of how you can help is a lot better than just saying, how can we help? And yeah.
As we go to the next question, one other thing to at least consider is many communities in this area and across the state set their own strategic priorities for their city or county. And so if you can say, that's a priority, we're interested in it, how can we help? That's another connection.
And just real quick before my question, I want to kind of highlight what Jill said about the technological divides that exist here. Running into random people at DOC, there was a Coast Guard commander who was telling me about a problem that they have that they would like help solving. We can talk about that later. And I mentioned, oh, well, we're having a hackathon on Saturday. And she's like, whoa, don't hack into any government systems. And, you know, that's one of those things that, I mean, the will to do these things is there, but often the understanding of what's available and how quickly it can be done is there's sometimes a disconnect there. So so thank you for helping to do that. So kind of going back a little bit to what I was talking about earlier, which is my question is, are there any existing mechanisms for coordinating with government during emergency response in terms of the brigades?
No, but I know that's something that I pitched in.
Well, you run the bat, so
yeah.
I was going to say, do you want to talk? Can we throw to non-panelists? Are we okay with that? So, can you talk, Jason?
No, I'm okay. I'll stand up.
The reason why I'm asking is, can you talk about the Irma and Harvey and Florence response and how you want to change them into?
Sure. Yeah. So during the hurricanes of past years, brigades in Houston and the South Florida kind of like spun up and just tried to help really identify like how can we match resources with people who need them, and that's kind of really where it started. And we even had some efforts that Phil mentioned a little earlier with Florence here. And so what we're hoping what's going to happen is we have a framework that we call brigade action teams, which allow brigades from across different brigades to work together, very in a much like an open source project way. And so we're hoping that we get a brigade action team to form around this, which would be a little bit more formality, has a formal communication structure, and then we can identify like stakeholders and how we want to organize. So I think that's kind of where we're heading.
And
they're called bats.
Yes.
I was trying to avoid the acronym, but yes.
Yeah.
The logo is an actual bat. It's fantastic.
We've got like 2 minutes.
I think it all comes to me. It all comes back to relationships again. Like our emergency management person is coming to speak in 2 weeks, and so hearing from her more of the needs, because I don't know the needs as much as you do for emergency management. That's within our county department, not our city department. I think I helped with the Florence response project, and I think that was really cool, but it also seemed like it was duplicating efforts to me of just locating shelters. So trying to understand maybe, and then people were trying to call, and I was like, gosh, if I'm a shelter volunteer, don't call me unless it's like an emergency.
So to that point exactly, that's one of the things that we heard from the Red Cross people. Sorry. That's one of the things we heard from the Red Cross people was that they were getting phone calls.
Inundated, probably,
inundated
yes.
with these questions.
Yeah, so talking with you about, and Red Cross and FEMA, which I think out of the Florence response, someone pointed out, well, maybe it wasn't the most impactful website, but it helped build, it was like a demo to FEMA. So we've started building relationships with FEMA. So, and Code for America has some relationships. So hopefully that will continue a conversation with people like yourself at Brigade Congress. Shout out for Brigade Congress in October in Charlotte.
So specifically October 19th to 21st, and this is where brigades from across
it's like
North
our
America
national convention.
gather. So
Yeah.
I'll at least let Steve Rao know to send someone from Morrisville for that.
But actually talking with you, because that's my worry, is that we could come up with all kinds of stuff probably, but what are the actual needs, especially needs that aren't being addressed by other agencies? Like to me, I know that we've created other things for Buncombe County created something to figure out poll waits for elections, like how long you had to wait for a poll to vote at the poll places with all the poll workers, which is a weird term to me. But think about that one for a second. Okay, there you go. But it was like they would, yes, we're catching up now. But they would send a text to the volunteers like once an hour. So it was automated, and then they would just count how many people were in line. So maybe creating something like that, and maybe it's even something where I'm not have to think like, what do I need? But it's like, do you need this, and like providing the list. But again, understanding from officials what the need is.
Just say one tiny little thing real quick.
No, you can't, unless Lori's going to allow you.
Are you going to stay through lunch? Yeah. Then wait.
Okay. So let's say thank you for my panelists, the rich information here. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Philip. All right. Yes. Thank you to all of the Code for America Brigade members, all of the community partners, as well as the local government partners. We do have a great connection between, in various, Steve is one because he looks across the street from Morrisville to Cary and he sees the Code for Cary Brigade and he's jealous. He's not here anymore, is he? No. So if you're in a community that doesn't have one, feel free to contact any of the folks that were up here. Certainly they'll help you. If you aren't a member of one and you want to see what it's about, you don't have to be one of the things I think you were great to talk about. You don't have to be a coder to be part of the Code for America Brigade or the Open Charlotte Brigade or whatever the name of your brigade is. In fact, it's sometimes just great if you're not, right? And some of the great ideas have come from people just like you sitting there. I remember the very first app that was created at the Civic camp, the Our Greenway app, all came about because somebody was standing up and saying, you know what, I have this one great app that tells me where the greenways are in Raleigh, but then it stops when it gets to Cary, right? So these are all great ideas that come from people